This is a snakeskin jacket, a symbol of my belief in my individuality and my personal freedom.
Nicolas Cage just got evicted from his latest home, and it's not the first time. The Oscar winner once owned 15 mansions worth $150 million, but lost them all in a financial disaster that shocked Hollywood. In 2009, his $6.3 million Bel Air estate was foreclosed on. He owed $18 million on that property alone. But there's something darker behind these evictions. Court documents reveal a betrayal by someone he trusted completely. The person who destroyed his empire wasn't a stranger. It was someone who had access to everything. The truth about who really stole his fortune will leave you speechless. Nicolas Cage entered the world on January 7, 1964, in Long Beach, California, as Nicholas Kim Coppola. He grew up in a house filled with mixed heritage and strong artistic energy. His father, August Coppola, loved literature so much that he built his whole life around it. His mother, Joy Vogelsang, moved like poetry and taught others to do the same. Nicholas was the youngest of 3 brothers, a quiet kid watching an artistic storm swirl around him. And it was not just inside the house. He was part of the Coppola family, a name already echoing through Hollywood. His uncle, Francis Ford Coppola, was shaping cinema. His aunt, Talia Shire, was bringing characters to life on screen. Everywhere Nicholas looked, stories were being created. And slowly, without forcing it, that air began to shape him. Everything changed when he was 6. His parents divorced, and the bright house he once knew split apart. He moved mostly with his mother in San Francisco. Those years were heavy. His mother struggled with bipolar disorder, and Nicholas watched her drift in and out of difficult episodes. These moments sat inside him quietly, teaching him empathy long before he understood the word. The boy who came from a well-known family also learned what fear and instability felt like. That mix built something in him, something that later let him reach deep into the souls of the characters he played. Yet something else grew beside the pain. Around age 8, he started copying actors he admired. He loved James Dean. He studied the way Dean walked and the way his voice cracked in certain scenes. Then he began performing little skits at family gatherings. At the Coppola home in Napa Valley, where creativity sat on every table, Nicholas found himself performing for relatives who already knew the weight of storytelling. These moments lit a spark. He felt alive when he acted, even when the audience was just his family eating dinner. By the time he turned 9, he joined a small local theater group. His first role was a pirate in a school play. It was small, but it gave him a taste of what could come next. Meanwhile, the struggles at home did not stop. His mother's health issues made life unpredictable, and money was tight. He later attended Beverly Hills High School, but that dream of a school full of famous kids was nothing like he imagined. He was bullied. He felt out of place. He even dropped out. To earn pocket money, he performed in the streets and in Hollywood alleys, doing whatever he could to keep the dream alive. At 15, after his mother was institutionalized, Nicholas moved to Los Angeles to live with his father. It was a hard shift, but it opened a new world. He fell into the punk rock scene and used it to express everything boiling inside him. He dyed his hair blonde like Elvis Presley, who had become an obsession for him. He carried Elvis in his voice, in his posture, even in the way he imagined himself walking into a room. These early choices were not random. They were ways of building a self that felt powerful, even when life was rough. At 16, things got even more intense. He met Crispin Glover at underground film screenings. They became friends and pushed each other creatively. Nicholas dove into method acting with everything he had. To understand homelessness for a role he imagined, He slept in phone booths. He wanted to feel cold, hungry, exhausted. He wanted truth. That need to go deeper became one of his strongest qualities. Then came the shift at 17. He auditioned for Rumble Fish, directed by his uncle Francis Ford Coppola. He landed a small part as a drug dealer. It should have been easy, but the family name was a shadow he wanted to escape. So he made a bold choice. He dropped Coppola and called himself Nicolas Cage. The name came from John Cage, an avant-garde composer, and from Luke Cage, a superhero he admired. This name meant freedom. It meant he would build a career on his own terms. But the struggle continued. He dealt with dyslexia during his teen years, which made reading scripts hard. He memorized lines by ear, training his body to feel dialogue instead of reading it. Because of this, he often improvised and surprised directors during auditions. What others saw as a weakness slowly became one of his signatures. To pay for acting classes at the Beverly Hills Playhouse, he took odd jobs like delivering pizza. At the Playhouse, he clashed with teachers who thought he was too intense. They wanted control. He wanted fire. That tension shaped his style, a style that would later explode on screen in ways only he could deliver. At 17, he also dated Christina Fulton, a relationship full of passion and arguments. The emotions from those years bled into his early performances. Real pain turned into believable characters. Real fights turned into raw energy. He was building his craft without even realizing it. These early moments formed a picture of a young man who was rebellious, emotional, and fiercely creative. Every hardship carved a new edge. Every risk added a new layer. These early years did not just shape him, they made him Nicolas Cage. His real push into Hollywood began at 18. He got a small role in Fast Times at Ridgemont High in 1982. He played Brad's bud, a tiny part that almost vanished from the movie. His screen time was short, and Sean Penn's character stole the spotlight. Still, the film earned $27 million at the box office, and Cage's small moment stayed because the director liked his natural timing. It was not enough to make him famous, but it kept the door open. Then came Valley Girl in 1983 when he was 19. It was his first proper speaking role. He played Randy, a rebellious musician, and instead of sticking to the script, he improvised most of it. What should have been a normal teen movie turned into something fresh. Valley Girl made $10 million off a $500,000 budget. His wild energy became unforgettable. In the same year, he worked on Rumble Fish again, this time playing Smokey, a reckless arsonist. He wanted to shake off the idea that he was just the Coppola kid, so he pushed himself harder, even overacted on purpose. Critics noticed. Variety called him a force of nature. The film only made $1.2 million in its opening week against a $10 million budget, but his performance took on a life of its own. At 20, he joined Racing with the Moon in 1984, working with Sean Penn again. The film tried to stay loyal to its 1943 setting, with big ships and accurate costumes. Cage brought his punk attitude anyway. It clashed with the tone, and some scenes had to be reshot. The movie made around $10 million against a $12 million budget. Not a huge win, but Cage's presence made people watch him closely. Then came one of the wildest moments of his early career. During the filming of Birdie in 1984, when he was 20, he broke his jaw while acting out a scene. He bit into a raw chicken to show his character's wild side and misjudged the force. The break needed immediate surgery. The pain shaped his performance, giving it a haunted edge that the director loved. Birdie had an $11 million budget, and the accident became part of Hollywood stories about his dedication. He also made a bold choice in The Cotton Club in 1984. He turned down safer roles to take a small, risky part in a $25 million musical drama directed by his uncle. The film only made $14 million, but critics said his performance looked unhinged in the best way. That fearlessness became his identity. He was not chasing safe, he was chasing truth. Nicolas Cage stepped into Moonstruck in 1987 with a fire that felt larger than the screen. He played Ronnie Camereri, a man who carried his pain like a scar he refused to hide. His story about losing his hand 5 years earlier came out like a confession that still burned. He held up that wooden prosthetic, stared straight through the moment, and shouted that he lost his hand and he lost his bride. The way he delivered it made you feel the whole world had betrayed him at once. The scene was carefully built, inspired by Metropolis, and it stuck in people's minds because it blended heartbreak with something strangely funny. By the time the movie came out, Cage had so much Oscar buzz around him that you could feel it rising from the screen. Then he jumped into Vampire's Kiss in 1988 and took method acting to a place most actors would never dare. He stayed awake for 48 hours. He practiced strange movements alone in his hotel room. He chased a feeling of madness that felt real. He even ate live cockroaches to push his character closer to the edge. When he ran through the streets yelling that he was a vampire, you could see pure chaos in him. He begged strangers to drive a stake through his heart. He drew from old German expressionist films and kabuki theater, letting exaggerated facial work pull out the character's inner storms. People were confused. Some were terrified. But the performance became a cult classic because it was one of the wildest things Hollywood had ever seen. Not long after that, in 1990, he stepped into Firebirds and tried to match the heat of Top Gun, only with helicopters. Cage and Tommy Lee Jones trained with military pilots so they could fly real helicopters themselves. They pulled off complex maneuvers without models or CGI, relying only on skill and grit. The movie made about $17 million, even though it cost $25 million to make. But the flying sequences stayed with people who love authenticity. Cage wanted to feel the danger, and you could see that hunger in every shot. And then something huge happened when he did Wild at Heart at 26. He played Sailor Ripley, an Elvis-obsessed runaway with a heart full of thunder. When the film premiered at Cannes, it shook the place. It won the Palme d'Or while the crowd booed loudly, creating one of the most unforgettable award ceremonies ever. Some critics loved it, some didn't. Roger Ebert famously walked away from it. Yet audiences kept talking about Cage's snake fighting, his strange monologues, and the way he made the role feel like a live wire. The movie made $14 million on a $10 million budget, and later turned into a cult favorite because of the storm he carried inside the role. 2 years later, in 1992, he did Honeymoon in Vegas. He played Jack Singer, a man who jumps out of a plane in his wedding tuxedo, and Cage actually did the stunt himself. Filming began in August 1991 across Las Vegas, New York, and California. The budget was $25 million. The energy was bright and fun. His skydiving scene, shot at high altitude, made the movie feel almost surreal. People loved the mix of romance, comedy, and Elvis impersonators, and Cage's fearless performance helped make it a favorite of its time. Then, leaving comedy behind, he stepped into something much darker in 1995 with Leaving Las Vegas. He lost 30 pounds for the role. He drank actual liquor during some scenes. He studied the behavior of someone who had given up on life. The film came out in October 1995 and earned him the Academy Award for Best Actor. Watching him as Ben Sanderson felt like watching someone break apart, piece by piece. Director Mike Figgis said Cage even worked with a drinking coach, so the details would be real. His work in this film changed his entire career. people stopped calling him quirky. They started calling him one of the best. In the middle of these intense roles, he also showed a softer side in It Could Happen to You in 1994. He played Charlie Lang, a cop who promised half his lottery winnings to a waitress after running out of change. The jackpot was $4 million. The movie was filmed on 16 millimeters to give it a warm, natural feeling. And it worked. It became a surprise hit because Cage played the role with honesty and charm. It was a small story with a big heart, and it helped people see him in a different light. Things were not always easy, though. When he did Kiss of Death in 1995, he clashed with director Barbet Schroeder over script changes. The tension spilled into the performance. Cage improvised threats. Scenes almost derailed. The film got criticism for its violence, but it also showed how far he was willing to go. He wanted every emotion to feel sharp and dangerous. And then a strange chapter came in 1997 when he bought a stolen Tyrannosaurus bataar skull for $276,000. He outbid Leonardo DiCaprio for it. Later it turned out the fossil had been taken illegally from Mongolia. Cage was forced to return it, and this discovery pulled him into IRS trouble. He ended up settling $14 million in taxes and had to give up rare items and property. It became one of the oddest celebrity stories of the decade and hinted at a financial storm that would come later. That same era brought some of his biggest action roles. In 1996, at age 32, he starred in The Rock as Stanley Goodspeed. One of the film's most intense scenes used real tear gas canisters. Cage's convulsions and exhaustion were real reactions, not effects. His character's symptoms matched the real science behind VX nerve gas, which can cause paralysis and respiratory failure within seconds. Even the moment where he jabs the atropine syringe into his chest followed the actual medical protocol. The film wanted realism, and he gave it everything. In 1997, at 33, he did Con Air and became Cameron Poe, a parolee trapped on a transport plane with dangerous convicts. They shot scenes in Nevada heat, where temperatures reached 100 degrees. Dust storms hit Wendover Airfield in Utah, while the cast worked long days under the sun. The movie made $224 million worldwide. The final sequence, filmed at the Sands Hotel during its real demolition, blended fiction with reality in a way people still talk about. That same year, he also starred in Face Off. He and John Travolta swapped faces in a story that pushed effects teams to their limits. They created silicone casts of both actors with tiny details like pores and individually placed hairs. The molds even moved slightly, so they looked alive. Cage had to wear a mold of his own face and said the experience felt trippy. The realism allowed him and Travolta to mimic each other so well that people still mention it when they talk about groundbreaking effects. By 1998, he stepped into City of Angels as Seth, a quiet angel who falls in love. The wing loss scene demanded days of wire work and emotional focus. He poured himself into the role. Meg Ryan said he carried real emotion into the scenes. The movie didn't chase awards, but the people who connected with it still hold on to it. And while the bee attack that later made headlines happened during The Wicker Man in 2006, his appetite for danger had begun years earlier. In Gone in 60 Seconds in 2000, he wrecked 12 cars himself and helped stage a massive convoy of 50 classic cars racing through downtown Los Angeles. He avoided stunt doubles whenever he could. The crash scenes took days to film, and Cage was hands-on during the planning. Nicolas Cage was riding higher than almost anyone in Hollywood. There were years when he made more than $40 million, years when every studio chased him, and years when it felt like he could buy anything he wanted without thinking twice. But slowly, the shine faded. By 2009, the IRS had filed tax liens worth $14 million against him. The blame went everywhere. Cage said his business manager, Samuel Levin, pushed him into dangerous real estate deals. He said Levin ignored warnings, let the spending grow wild, and left him drowning in debt. Court papers later claimed Cage lost more than $150 million under Levin's watch, including over $6 million in property taxes alone. When the dust settled, Cage had to sell nearly everything he owned. People called it the biggest tax disaster in recent Hollywood history, and for a while, it felt like every headline in the world pointed at him. Then came the homes. In 2009, his $6.3 million Bel Air mansion slipped away in foreclosure. The estate stretched across 11,917 square feet and had once been listed for $35 million, yet it barely drew interest at auction and finally went for $10.5 million. It was only one piece of the collapse. Cage owned 15 grand properties scattered across the world. Castles in Europe, private islands, homes filled with art, jewelry, and rare collectibles. Together, they were worth around $150 million. After the 2008 crash, he watched them disappear one by one, often at staggering losses. His Bel Air mansion alone had 6 loans tied to it worth $18 million. Realtors walked through the house and said it looked frat house chic, and that became the final insult as his real estate empire fell apart. Trouble followed him everywhere in 2009. A producer sued him for $36.7 million, saying the idea for National Treasure had been stolen. At the same time, Cage was being pressed to repay over $5 million connected to failed real estate deals. And in the middle of all that, he bought a $7.7 million pyramid tomb in Egypt for himself. The lawsuit was eventually settled quietly, leaving rumors hanging around the movie's origin. The tomb and the lawsuit together turned into part of his legend, a strange mix of ambition and chaos during the darkest days of his finances. Inside his home life, things shook even more. His marriage to Alice Kim had begun in 2004, but by 2009 the pressure was breaking them apart. Cage needed money, fast, so he sold his famous comic book collection. Action Comics #1 went first. It brought in $2,161,000 and became the first comic to cross the 2 million mark. His manager pushed him to sell classic cars and other prized pieces too. The divorce came years later in 2016, but the early cracks formed in those hard months when debts rose and everything around him felt like it was slipping away. That comic auction still stands out as one of the most talked about celebrity sales ever. His career felt shaky too. Bangkok Dangerous came out in 2008. It cost $45 million to make, but only brought in $15.3 million in the United States. Even though it opened at #1 with $7.8 million, the weekend was so low it became the worst #1 opening since 2003. The film dropped quickly and left Cage staring at a loss of around $42 million once marketing was counted. Not long after that, in 2011, he got arrested in New Orleans for domestic abuse and disturbing the peace after a drunken argument with Alice Kim. Witnesses said he was yelling and hitting cars before police took him in. The charges were later dropped, but the embarrassment fed the public jokes and whispers around his name. By 40, he had already become known for unusual choices, even in his personal life. He bought a pet octopus for $150,000 and named it Cool. He said it helped him deal with stress, helped him think differently, and kept him inspired when Hollywood pressure closed in. His home also had cobras, sharks, and even a two-headed snake. The octopus turned into a symbol of that strange period when his creativity and his chaos were tangled together. Then a shift came. In 2018, at 54, he stepped into Mandy. The film was dark, violent, and dreamlike. It premiered at Sundance, grossed only $3.9 million in theaters, and cost around $5 million to make. But it exploded online. People shared clips of Cage drinking LSD-soaked tequila and screaming into the night. They called it his rebirth. It was strange and raw and full of emotion, and suddenly there was talk of awards again. Mandy marked him as a cult icon and opened the door to a new chapter. 2 years earlier, he had already shown another side in Kick-Ass. At 46, he played Big Daddy with dramatic, campy energy that felt ripped from Adam West's Batman. The film had a $26 million budget and made $96 million worldwide. People replayed his scenes, repeated his lines, and turned moments into memes. He had leaned into absurdity, and it worked. And in 2011, he pushed back into action with Drive Angry. The budget sat around $5 million, and Cage played a man who escaped from hell to save his granddaughter. The stunts used real 1969 Dodge Chargers and Chevelles, and one of them was nearly totaled. The movie made $31 million worldwide and gave him a boost among fans who loved B-movie energy and relentless action. Even while fighting his own storms, he faced family challenges too. In 2011, his son Weston filed for bankruptcy. Rehab, legal trouble, more rehab, and public breakdowns followed. Court documents from 2024 and 2025 showed Cage bailed Weston out more than once and kept supporting him. That loyalty became both criticized and respected, showing how messy and difficult family can be when life spins out of control. He kept working. In 2013, at 49, he voiced Grug in The Croods. The movie cost $135 million and made $587 million worldwide. It was one of the biggest hits of the decade for him and helped calm the image of a man going through crisis. During that same stretch of years, he appeared in more than 40 films, showing how determined he was to keep going no matter what people said. Stories about his wild past kept popping up too. One claimed he anonymously donated sperm in the 1990s and fathered more than 50 children. The story added to the legend. People whispered it. Fans joked about it. It became one more strange detail in a life full of them. Then came Pig in 2021. At 57, he played a quiet man searching for a lost truffle pig. No action, no explosions, just emotion. The film reached a 97% score on Rotten Tomatoes from 268 reviews, and people said it was his best performance in almost 20 years. It was slow and thoughtful, and showed a deep side many forgot he had. It became a turning point in his late career. In 2022, he stepped into the unbearable weight of massive talent at age 58. He played a fictional version of himself, a man facing debt and fading fame. The story followed him accepting a $1 million offer to attend a superfan's birthday, only to get dragged into a CIA mission. The movie blended comedy, nostalgia, and self-reflection. Cage poked fun at his past, and people loved it. In 2023, he played Dracula in Renfield. At 59, he used real fang implants and pushed the performance into wild, intense energy. The movie mixed horror and comedy and reminded fans of older Cage roles like Vampire's Kiss. His style fit perfectly, and critics said he stole the film. In 2024, he starred in The Surfer at SXSW. The story about a man losing his home hit close to rumors around Cage's own past, and the performance carried that fire. It felt personal, almost like he poured old frustration into the role. In 2025, at 60, he dealt with a lawsuit from his ex Christina Fulton about their son, Weston. The case was dropped, and Cage turned his attention back to work. He teased a sequel for Longlegs and spent time with his rare book collection that included pieces worth millions, even a manuscript from the 13th century. his career seemed steadier, a blend of passion projects and carefully chosen studio films. By November 2025, he had made more than 125 films. He averaged about 4 a year since 2010. In his peak years, his net worth passed $100 million. By 2023, he owed $6.3 million to the IRS and had sold Action Comics #1 for $2.16 million. But little by little, he climbed back up, reaching an estimated $25 to $40 million by 2025. His comeback became a story of pure resilience. Even old stories resurfaced, like the time he told David Letterman about seeing a UFO over his New York apartment in the 1990s. He said the lights moved in ways he could not explain, and it pushed him toward roles about aliens and mysteries. Fans loved the story, and it added another layer to his legend. His personal life kept shifting too. He married Patricia Arquette in 1995 and ended it in 2001. Then came Lisa Marie Presley in 2002, a marriage that lasted only 4 months. Elvis fans could not believe it. After that, he married Alice Kim in 2004 and stayed with her until 2016. In 2019, he married Erica Koike for 4 days before getting it annulled. His marriages became part of his public identity, full of surprises and sudden turns.